A well-structured therapy aimed at addressing fear starts with setting goals as one of its initial steps. Properly defined goals form the foundation for positive changes and long-term relief from suffering. Still, uncertainty about which changes are achievable and desired can call into question the entire prospect of your struggle against anxiety. What transformations do you envision for yourself when you think about recovery? Most patients, unfamiliar with modern CBT concepts, would likely give one of two answers. I want to stop worrying, or I want these awful thoughts to never come up again. This applies to OCD and anxiety disorders such as panic attacks or aerophobia. The desire to rid oneself of terrifying thoughts and repulsive obsessions, to never think of them again, is understandable. Equally as clear is the wish to erase even the memory that you ever faced such a problem as unwanted fears. Here's the bad news and the good news for you. The bad news is that you will never be able to rid yourself of unpleasant thoughts completely. If you try to suppress them, both their significance and quantity will increase as a result. We usually demonstrate this with the white bear exercise. Imagine a bear with white fur. It could be alone, in a pack, or with its babies. It may be walking across an ice floe or emerging from the water with a fish clasped in its jaws. Focus on the shades of white on its fur. Then, for the next minute, do everything possible to prevent this white bear from appearing in your mind. Remove it from the landscape where you observed it. Concentrate all efforts on ensuring that neither its image nor a single thought about it even comes close to your consciousness. Most people cannot last even 10 seconds. White bears begin to invade the mind despite any efforts. What conclusion can be drawn from this exercise? The more we try to suppress the thoughts or images, the more persistently they permeate our consciousness. And now, we've conducted an experiment with an entirely neutral image that holds no significance to you. What happens when you try to combat obsessions that latch onto the most meaningful themes in your life? You spiral downward. The more you try to get rid of these thoughts, the more frightened you become, and the more desperately you fight them without an end in sight. The reason for this bad news lies in setting a misguided goal and, without realizing it, expending an enormous amount of effort trying to achieve it. You relentlessly try to dig yourself out of a hole. How does attempting to dig yourself out of a hole typically end? That's right, you find yourself even deeper underground. The most proven method against OCD and all anxiety disorders is exposure and response prevention therapy, intentionally immersing yourself in frightening situations. A straightforward way to address contamination fear is to systematically touch surfaces that feel less than clean, gradually increasing the perceived level of dirtiness week by week. For fear of heart failure, do you panic concerning cardiac overload? Exposure involves progressively increasing cardiovascular workouts under a therapist's supervision. Or if your OCD involves nagging doubts about feelings for your partner, the most effective exposure for you would be embracing uncertainty about whether you made the right choice in a life partner. For most varieties of OCD, exposure therapy is a cornerstone of effective treatment which may allow you to regain a long-forgotten level of fearlessness. This occurs because your mind steadily becomes accustomed to the situations, thoughts, and feelings of which you immerse it with. Nevertheless, no matter how diligently you engage in exposure and response prevention, intrusive thoughts will not disappear. Yes, their significance and consequently their quantity will noticeably decrease and your quality of life will definitely improve as a result, but thoughts usually do not entirely vanish except under one circumstance, when they are replaced by new, more unpleasant thoughts. But that scenario probably isn't one you'd welcome. The only truly effective course is to continue your exposure exercises while staying aligned with your values, dedicating yourself to the areas of life that genuinely matter to you. And here's the good news: we can lead deeply fulfilling lives even in the presence of intrusive thoughts and fears. This fulfillment stems from the concept of values. Values are the guiding principles that define our life's priorities, offering us direction and deeply significant purpose in how we choose to live. These are areas of life in which we are willing to invest the greatest amounts of effort and time. Yet, these same areas are the primary targets for OCD. Obsessions prey on the most profound aspects of your life, exploiting your values and forcing you to follow them in distorted ways. For example, the value of being a good father may be undermined by contrasting thoughts that you might harm your child. OCD then forces you to care for your child in a very peculiar manner, perhaps by physically avoiding them to prevent harm. Would this behavior be truly caring if examined objectively? It's likely not what your child would expect from you. A healthier and more rewarding strategy would be direct adherence to your values. How can you become a better parent without succumbing to OCD's demands? Well, for instance, you can play more with your child and offer more words of support, all while ignoring intrusive aggressive thoughts. Or suppose anxiety related to health overwhelms you with the fear of a heart attack simply due to a rapid heartbeat or elevated blood pressure, even though your general practitioner assures you of a low risk. Consequently, you might excessively monitor your pulse and seek medical help at the slightest symptom. Which of your values is health anxiety exploiting in this way? Likely, it's the value of a long and healthy life. How can you follow your values in a more reasonable manner? You can invest your energy in genuinely caring for yourself, for example, by incorporating regular cardiovascular workouts into your routine. This proactive approach not only enhances your physical health, but also aligns you with your desire for longevity in a positive way. To summarize, we cannot control the emergence of fears. The more we attempt to suppress them, the deeper we get entangled in them. However, our well-being is not determined by the existence of fear, but rather by how we respond to it and, most importantly, how we act in its presence. By structuring our life not around anxieties, but aligning it with our values in the most logical and straightforward way, we'll lay the foundation for a life truly worth living, regardless of whether unpleasant thoughts linger in our minds.